Welcome to Ren Behind the Practice. I'm Sophie Campisi. I'm a holistic business strategist and startup expert, and I spend a lot of my time in conversation with practitioners, coaches, and healers about the behind the scenes of their businesses. What I started noticing is that some of the most honest, important conversations about building a practice were happening quietly, one-on-one, behind the scenes, and often in isolation. Most practitioners are incredibly skilled at the work they do with their clients, but very few of us were ever taught or trained in how to build a successful startup business. And suddenly we've been left to figure it out on our own. This podcast exists to bring those conversations forward, the dreams, the uncertainty, the highs and lows, the recalibrations, and the messy middle. My hope is that by normalizing these conversations, we can soften the stigma, feel less alone, and start closing the gaps together. Today's guest is Shannon Pereira. Shannon is a microdosing, magic, and medicinal mushrooms coach, power perspective coach, writer, and speaker. Shannon, it's so great to have you here. Thank you for showing up and having this conversation with me today.
Great to be here, Sophie. Thank you for having this platform and doing the work that you do.
Before we look behind the scenes today, can you share with us a little bit more about the work you do?
For sure. So I am almost obsessed in the best possible way, I think, with mushrooms and the power of mushrooms. So I help people using functional and medicinal mushrooms to heal, optimize, or evolve mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, whatever aligns with them, with the power of functional and medicinal mushrooms. And those medicinal mushrooms may also be psilocybin mushrooms and or amanita mushrooms. So psychedelic or psychoactive mushrooms, as well as ones like lion's mane, turkey tail, cordyceps, these really great adaptogenic mushrooms. So seeing incredible with people and their own healings, just using Mother Nature. So I'm really excited to share and to serve the mushrooms.
Is there a specific group of people that you tend to focus on your work with?
Sure. It usually tends to be women between about 30 to 60. And I have done some research as to why. And it's just, women tend to be, not to generalize, but we tend to be more emotionally connected and more readily available to want to take action to make change. And a lot of us, those are the perimenopause to menopause years, and dramatic changes happen physiologically, mentally, emotionally, and we're seeking more things that are natural. And that's why usually I tend to be working with women, but I have also worked with teens. I've worked with veterans. I've worked with men. There's different people with different addictions or behaviors that they want to change, but predominantly it's women from about 30 to 60, 65.
You kind of touched on this, but is there a specific thing that they tend to come to you for? This happened, and is there something in common that they all have, or it's just like, hey, I want something new. I'm stuck and I want something new.
It's kind of that, but mostly I have a two-part answer for this. So the commonality is I don't want pharmaceuticals anymore. Actually, I get goosebumps when I feel like it's a truth speaking. So that's usually the common thing is I don't want to become a cash cow to big pharma, and I want something different, and I want it to be natural. I want my body to feel at its best, and I want it to be healing, not just like I have to keep filling this script forever in order to feel at minimum okay. And then the other aspect of that is I really, really believe and have this kind of now fundamental understanding that fungus are the grand alchemists. And humanity has had this relationship with fungus since our beginnings. We don't exist without fungus. And a lot of people, we just haven't been educated about how it came to be. And, there's no plant life without fungus. There's no oxygen without fungus. There's no us without fungus. And no human has ever breathed without inhaling fungal spores. So we also share 50% of our DNA with fungus. And there's so many other incredible facts like that. And I believe that when people are looking for this medicine again, it's like they're kind of being called home, or they're being called to remember, put back together a part of our selves that we have just kind of forgotten or fallen asleep to. And now it's because of what's happening on the planet and what's happening within ourselves, as above, so below, we're being called home to be in union with this medicine again. and it is medicine, and a true medicine where you don't need it again after you're healed. But we do kind of continue our relationship with using certain kinds of mushrooms so that we can continue to evolve and connect to our divinity and our spirituality.
The first time I ever used microdosing as a tool personally was to get off of pharmaceuticals. I was much younger. I was maybe in my early 20s, but I was working with a doctor, and that was like absolutely the big goal that I had was like, I want to get off of these medications that were so hard to get off of without something. And I had failed coming off of them in the past. I don't know now exactly what they were. I don't think they were SSRIs, but whatever they were, something in that.
Yeah.
And I had failed to get off of them before because it was so hard. And then, fortunate for me, I was introduced to, or, like it was just time. And that was the first time I ever used microdosing of mushrooms to get off of the pharmaceuticals, and successfully. I'm now 35, so 15 years or whatever, successfully without any pharmaceuticals. But yeah, totally
Good
get
for
it.
you. Yeah, good for you. And it's so easy to get this stuff prescribed. Like you can just walk in somewhere and say, I'm depressed, give me something. And, whether it is that people are incentivized to prescribe certain things or they get a payout also for that, or it's just, we're not as educated about traditional medicines, but it can be so easily prescribed to you, and you're not necessarily given the education about how challenging it can be to get off. So congrats to you for getting off the end at such a young age when, our hormones are still all over the place and we're still figuring out who we are. So like, that's amazing.
I can't like take credit for it. I think, when I think about things like that, it's like, I guess at risk of sounding too like, woo-woo or whatever, I just think it's in the unfoldment. When I look back, it was like, that was just the time, like that was what was there for me. Of course, I didn't have to engage, I guess. I think, of course, there's free will, but like for whatever reason, that was the time that all the pieces came together, that I was introduced to it in a really, thoughtful, thorough way, that by someone that I trusted, and I engaged. And so I'm just grateful. When I look back, I'm like, yeah, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that was the time for me to do that. But you and I talked before we started recording, I had my dark night of the soul when I was 19, which for most of us isn't, is kind of around, but back then, super early. So like everyone around me, when they're going through our dark night of the soul, it looks insane to everyone else, and so especially I was 19, people thought I was crazy and, whatever. And that was a really, of course, very hard time at life. You can't make sense of a dark night of the soul on the outside, because when you're on the inside and even to the outside, it's like black is white, white is black, up is down, left is right. Like you don't, it's so all over the place. For whatever reason, it's my path to just keep going, not try to make sense of it, just keep going, just like it's already, the crack already happened, just like keep on going. So yeah, really cool. Yeah, I totally get everything that you're saying. When you look ahead to the next 6 to 12 months, what goals do you have for your work?
Honestly, and I like this question, but honestly, it's kind of a day-to-day thing right now. And I believe that I'm pretty good at manifesting things. And I believe that the mushrooms help me manifest. And at any given day, I might meet someone or have a connection that's like, oh my God, let's collaborate. Let's work on something. Like I just randomly found you, and you're this incredibly cool human that's doing what you're doing and helping people. And in the next 6 to 12 months, like I just want to continue to meet people like yourself that we're in service to something, but we're also entrepreneurial. And we also believe that we are worthy of having abundance, because everybody is. So in a roundabout answer to your question, I want to have a larger community where everybody wins. This is my new mantra for how I want my life to unfold, is everybody wins. And, I want to be helping the client, help the planet, help people, help myself, help the mushrooms, service. And if I'm doing that in whatever capacity, then I am in abundance. I am winning. I am successful. That's my kind of definition of success, is if everybody around me is winning and people feel connected. But community is now one of the biggest drivers that I have. It's no longer, I need to have this figure in my account. I need to have this many clients. I need to have this fund for marketing. No, it's like, have I helped people today? Do people feel belonging? Do people feel included? Do people feel happy? And have we connected in a way that helps us to remember who we really are? So that's kind of my new gauge is connection, clarity, and having that confidence that we can rely on each other and not with I did this for you, so you do this for me, but just a genuine drive to be of service.
One of the reasons that I love doing what I do now is a very right, because I used to be a practitioner working with people one-on-one. And when I fully committed to, like I told you, and many people that I've interviewed before listening, I didn't set out to do business strategy. I didn't set out to become a startup expert. I was a practitioner myself, couldn't figure out the business, was trying to figure it out and understand why was nothing working that I was trying. Everyone kept telling me, if you do this, it's going to work. And it didn't work. And I would spend thousands on coaches and the courses and all the things because I knew I was supposed to be doing this, but I couldn't figure out how to get the business sustainable and actually pay my bills and basic things, right? I wasn't trying to grow a massive business. I was just trying to like fulfill what, is felt like, my dharma, what I was meant to do. But, and none of it was working. So I just was exploring and trying to search and solve that problem. And of course, discovered it ultimately. And I didn't do it to do it professionally. And I kind of had to make that choice at some point to say, wait a second, is this the next evolution of, how all of my history and everything that I've done actually leads up to this being the next thing that I pop into because it all makes sense and it can make me uniquely really capable to be in this position. Anyway, part of what anchors me in this space is exactly what you just said, because when my people, air quotes, my people win, everyone wins. Like there is no downside to these businesses, these entrepreneurs, these solopreneurs being successful. There's no downside. If I'm able to do my job and support someone to thrive in their work, the world becomes a better place, simply speaking, of course. Like people heal, the world becomes a better place. Like there is no downside to it. And everything that you're saying is something that, of course, like that is maybe the main pillar. It has me anchored in, my mission now of like, when you're successful, not only am I successful, but also the world becomes a better place. And like in a time when that couldn't be more important, when the way showers, finding the people that they're meant to support and guide forward are successful, like there's maybe not like a more important thing in my eyes, which is of course why I'm doing what I'm doing. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying. It's a meaningful, it's a meaningful thing.
For sure. And I think there's, the terms and all of the kind of new age spiritual things, it doesn't need to have a specific label or anything, but like light workers or people that are just, in the healing space, if you hold that torch up and stay kind of walking ahead, instead of getting in a pity pit with people, you are doing the best favor for them because you are holding the light up for someone to see their way out of darkness. And the inclination might be to like go in the pit and help grab someone out. But the more authentic version of being who you are also as the working in the healing space is to like just hold the torch and show someone where the way is, and or at least that there is a way or that there is light and just keep going towards that. And it's really rewarding. So.
Totally. The metaphor that I see sometimes about this is kind of like paving actual roads, paving actual pathways. Whereas like, for the people who came before me that made it all possible, it's forests and came before us. Forests, and they're charting their way. They're like in truly uncharted territory. And then, more of us were like, okay, we're still on the pioneering side, trying to figure it out. Most of the people that I connect with, like it wasn't a clear path. It was like very much like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm dying. Like what's happening to me? And then, kind of grabbing for resources and trying to figure it out and kind of piecing things together to like get to the place where we are. But based on the vision that I see in this metaphor and what we see in the world, like so many people are getting called to wake up. The chaos that's happening, if everyone's trying to like run through this metaphorical like forest and it's not paved. So for those of us, it's like carry the torch and also like paving these ways. And we all have a pocket of people. We all have a pocket of people that we're uniquely suited to support based on our life experience, based on our skills, our brilliance, our genius, our gifts, our modalities, like create this like, unique setup. So it's like if we focus on paving our way, paving our path, keeping that light held, like there is a group of people that is uniquely supposed to come down this road. There's other people that are going to go down other roads. Not everyone can fit on the same roads. It's like because right now it's too many people are getting called to wake up. And if they all have to do it the way that we did it, it's too slow, it's too cumbersome. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But you don't have to touch the stove to also know it's hot. You can trust someone now, like, okay, I won't do that thing because you took such a long, interesting road to do that. I can just learn by I think that's the benefit of coaches and those that have walked the path before. They could just pass on the good stuff, pass on the knowledge.
Yeah, and just make it simpler the same way people did that for us and did for them. It's like just simpler, make it a little bit more effective and easier. And I guess simply speaking, decrease the amount of harm caused, like increase the amount of like ease to go through, decrease the amount of harm because, awakening, it's intense. We all know that, like it's intense. And I think part of what we're dealing with is there's so many people getting called to wake up at one time that there is some chaos that's ensuing when people don't have the tools and the resources that can actually like guide them out and guide them through, and instead staying spinning in that place of I can't make it sense of the world, my place in it, and like what's what, and like,
And part of
addiction rates, suicide rates, harm, like all of the things are, like data points that we know, like, yeah, this is serious.
Yeah. And there's a lot of so exponential amounts of people now waking up. Like we had all the Epstein files and all the things. And maybe you're similar, but during maybe what do you call it? Like a transition or cocoon breaking open, I didn't have the same dopamine trapping addictive tools, weapons, if you want to call it that are there now, where you can just stay trapped in this, like, oh my God, and there's this happening and there's this happening. And of course you want to have a drink or numb yourself or have this or that because the world can seem so bleak if that's your perspective, if that's the window that you have. So it is important that community more than ever, like I think I just read a report the other day that more harmful than alcoholism was loneliness. And that just seems like there's a loneliness pandemic right now. There's a mental health pandemic right now. And the population has never been larger, right? So how are we more lonely? We're more isolated. We're more in our own heads and over critiquing, over judging, over analyzing ourselves, and then separating and putting a division between us and, oh, well, they have it so much better, or, oh, they don't care about me, or I'm just alone. And really, there are these constructions of paradigms that do not serve us. So if people that are feeling these things are able to reach out or be reached out by, or see the people that are like, no, listen, let's take off this mask or this harmful surroundings or glasses that you've got on, so you can actually see that, no, there are great people in the world. There is fundamentally love imbued with everything. And, you're just looking over here as a distraction from the reality that is. And you just have to see more of that. And it's going to be a challenging time for a lot of people, but it's also what makes it worthwhile, right? Is on the spectrum, you can't have the light and the happiness and the goodness without the dark and the shadow and the badness. It's not bad. It's just what makes the good better.
Absolutely. This came up recently with someone in this podcast series, talking about just having the conversations about business, shifting there a little bit, of having the conversations about business and having the open, vulnerable ones. And she was saying, I don't know if this was a pre-recording thing or actually on the recording, but she was saying how she learns more from hearing people talk about their hardships than hearing all of the great, good, like perfect stories. And that's part of what I was saying is like, well, because it's really hard to even feel the great without having understood where they've been. Like you can't even really appreciate success without understanding how hard it was also to get there. Like the reality of that is what makes it all so real and authentic. And even hearing someone's success, you just hear someone's success, it's like, okay. But like if you hear their context of like all of the hardship that it took, I was telling her, I was sharing how I used to listen to this business building podcast a lot. Inevitably, I would cry in every single episode. There would be a moment where they kind of had that breakthrough, that like where everyone would say that overnight success moment. But I just listened for an hour to every time they had no money, they were in debt, they had to move home, they had to, all of these things that went wrong. I just heard all of that. So that moment, the way it hits is just like, it's just so amazing. But it's because I heard all of the hardships and everything that you're saying. Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
100%.
When it comes to cultivating community around your work, around what you're doing, your mission, reaching more people, what do you think that it's going to take to do that?
Education. For me, I'm so lucky. I'm so grateful that I work with hyper intelligent, sentient beings. And I give talks sometimes. And one of the first things I say to an audience is there's two types of people on the planet. One are people that are in love with and so grateful for and incredibly appreciative of all the things fungus and mushrooms do for us. And the second kind of people are just people that don't know enough about them yet. And that for me is it's just education. And that's how I can be of service. And sometimes I get really nervous before a talk and I'm like, want to throw up, or I'm like, oh my God, why do I do this to myself? I'm so nervous. I don't want to talk about it. But I just ask the mushrooms. I'm like, please, can you help me serve your message as best as possible so that I can help people understand how you can help them help themselves? And I get the goosebumps when it's like a truth. And then they help me. And it's just, I don't know if I'm channeling it or it's a placebo thing I'm doing to myself, but it really is like just me educating myself as much as I can and then just sharing that forward. So education and connection. And I really think too is when you're in a authentic vibration of servitude, you don't have to sell anything. You don't. And if it ever feels that way, I'm constantly kind of reflecting and inflecting and searching for understanding. And if I feel like I'm trying too hard or to sell something, I'm like, no, okay, back up for a second and let's look at the vibrational resonance. I am a firm believer, understander, I listened to a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza and did some of his retreats in Australia, and nothing trumps vibrational resonance. We can effort and we can swim upstream and we can fight really hard for something, but it's never going to be as powerful as vibrating at the frequency of what you actually want, embodying a beingness before you start to go study. Like you shared with me that you've got 3 degrees. You just breezed over that, by the way. That's phenomenal. And, 1,000 certifications. And then we also kind of have this feeling I do of like, oh, maybe if I just take one more course, like I'm taking 3 courses right now. And I know when I'm done, I'll be like, oh, maybe that one over there. Like, but it's a seeking intelligence and knowledge. And like, what else can I learn? What's the intel behind this? But I guess just having as much information as possible to share as much as possible and give as much as possible. And I really think that we're going to get back what you put out. So that's always going to be successful. I think I completely shifted from your original question. So sorry. I don't remember
It's fine.
what it was.
No, you did. Education and having the ability to, maybe I'll like paraphrase how I understood what you were saying, having the ability to be thorough and be able to articulate some of the stuff. I think that one of the things that comes up with people on in these podcast conversations is sometimes, the breakdown of how hard it can be to, air quotes, market, which I know if someone's having a marketing problem, it's actually usually like the startup foundation's problem. But the reality of like, a lot of what we do, it can't be necessarily seen with the eyes. So how do we do a good job, especially if we're running online businesses or our services, we're trying to reach people and we're not in a physical space with them, which a lot of us are, or at least we have a component of our work and our business that is that. How do we reach people or, cut through the noise when we can't show a clear before and after picture, or we can't send them a physical thing that they can hold and touch and, kind of coming out of the primarily materialist in terms of like the scientific view of the dominant view of how the world works. And I think part of what I was hearing you say is that one of the ways I think that we feel drawn to do that is by, like you said, understanding like these things that you can't see with your eyes, like you have to have some sort of ability for us to have a strong foundation and how these things are working and try to like understand it so that we can do a good job in being thoughtful and eloquent and effective in our way of communicating that with people who might not understand, people who might be at the beginning of their path and they're seeking information, they're seeking some understanding and they're early on or whatever way we might want to say, like ultimately what's fundamental to that is building trust. How do we build trust around something that is not as obvious as someone coming from the very, materialist dominant viewpoint of the world of, we have to be able to see it with your eyes to like understand it or believe it. We have that going against us. I don't think in a bad way. I think it's amazing because what that means is people are starting to come this way. That's what I was understanding from what you were sharing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the greatest, it's a huge word for me that I incorporate with clients and just try to incorporate in my day-to-day all the time. And the word is surrender. And it's like we, in my opinion, have to relearn everything that we were taught about not just manifesting, but in understanding how our energy works, how our healing works, how we are always valuable. We never have to work to be valuable. We're always worthy. We never have to prove it or gain it from external validation. But because we got taught like, oh, well, you have to be this size or weight or look this pretty or have this tight skin or all of this garbage that marketing is aimed to do. And like, if you get this, you'll be better so that you can achieve this. When really we have to reteach ourselves how to just be in love with ourselves by just existing. And I believe that we've come to this space, this current meat suit, if you will, to just understand that there's a hero's journey in just our presence on this planet, in this space, in this dimension, in this density, and to feel the whole range of emotions, be it complete misery. To that, you talked about your dark night of the soul. Those are fun, huh? But then because you had that, you get to experience then the light at the end of that tunnel and knowing that there is one. And then you go through this evolution process. One of my favorite things about this butterfly analogy coming out of the cocoon is like, and how I relate it to surrendering is the butterfly looks probably so helpless and needs help trying to get out of its cocoon. And it needs to shove and change and develop these certain, I guess, whatever butterfly muscles are called, to break out and to open its wingspan. But if you see that butterfly, you're like, I want to help it. Let me help this get out. And if you help it, it won't develop the strength that it needs in order to have its wings able to fly. So through the struggle, it becomes who it's meant to be. And that's the only way out is through. And that takes a cultivation of understanding surrender. It's not this weakness, it's this empowerment of letting go in order to allow what's meant for you to come through. And I think that's why I align a lot with working with psychedelics. You literally process a ego death and ego dissolution. Your default mode network of the brain turns right off and you experience a loss of amness of who am I? Oh no, this self of giving myself shit for this, that, and the other thing. It's actually quieted now, and I have to surrender to what is now. And that isness is our true, authentic selves. So surrender is really, really empowering to me, and something that I teach a lot in this work, and in the art of awakening. What I'm now calling it is the art of awakening. Surrender is crucial.
I love that metaphor of the butterfly coming out. Of course, I've heard the metaphor of the transformation, being in the cocoon, not chill, but I haven't ever heard that nuance and that distinction about the actual coming out, and the breaking out and how necessary it is to let that butterfly go through that hardship so that it can survive the next phase. And I mean, as a parent, of course, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, okay, that will be burned into my brain, right? Like that will be like burned into my brain. But yeah, everything that you're saying, yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that has felt especially heavy or unclear or uncertain on the actual practice, business building part of stewarding or forwarding the work that you want to do in the world?
So much of that. Oh, the entrepreneurial journey is like, I have to do that. That's me. Oh, who is in charge of this? No, that's me. I'm not in a corporation anymore. There's no IT department or HR department or someone to help me through this. You got to figure out a lot of stuff on your own, or platforms and community groups and WhatsApp groups. And I think just for me, even trying to get a website together and like hiring this person or trying to do it cheaply, and just like, why can't this work? And you have to just laugh at the end of the day sometimes, because why not? Just, I have this phrase of, enlightening the F up, enlighten up. Alan Watts has this quote, is like, we take too seriously what the gods made for fun, and that's suffering. But in terms of what's been really challenging, it was really navigating my way through unworthiness. And it comes back to taking all those courses. Like, if I just do this one more, then I'll be accredited enough. And you're never going to do that. You're never going to have that one more. It's human nature to always want more. And like, we're satisfied for a moment, but then we want a little bit more. We kind of forget that a crumpled up $1 million note is still worth $1 million, and your worth isn't changed by anything that you can do or not do. So I think kind of the hardest part was just like, you're good enough to do this. And instead of, you don't really listen to people that tell you that. You can hear 100 things that are like, oh, you did so well, this is great. And then that one person's like, well, that was kind of, I didn't really like that thing. That's what stays burned in your brain of like, oh no, so I think it's really been cultivating the soulpreneur mentality. And I think I'm really grateful that I've come to a spot now where I'm not making 6 figures in this business, but it's like a successful abundance of attitude, of gratitude, of mindset, of whatever I do now, I win. And the I win comes from, like we were talking about earlier, you don't win when everything's easy. You win by educating yourself. And I learn more when I lose. And I call learning winning. So you win or you win. And the faster that you can shift your thinking about something when you lose, the faster you're able to move through that with that emotional intelligence, and then to almost dissect where you could improve. And really, that is what makes you better in your own business and in your own sense of resilience. And it doesn't have to be grit anymore. Like we used to think it was hustle culture, grind. But now for me, it's like, oh, surrender, understand, stop shooting on myself. Like, should have done that. I should have done it this way. Just like, okay, cool. What did you learn? How can you do it better next time? Great. And just really giving myself the talk I would give a client has shifted everything.
If you could wave a magic wand and have one thing solved or fixed for you on your entrepreneurship journey, what would it be?
That's a really great question, because half of me wants to say I wouldn't, because I wouldn't learn if it was like an easily solved thing. We were just talking about that. But I do like the magic. I'm stroking my invisible beard here. But it would be just, I love the intelligence of these sentient creatures, the mushrooms, plant medicine, amphibian medicine, as you know. And I would just hope that people could start really looking into why these substances are illegal and really start to understand that not because, like Terence McKenna said, a loving government wants to protect you, but for deeper reasons, and start to come to their own understanding of like, let's connect back to the nature that we all come from. The trees, the plants, go sit outside and connect your feet to the earth, not just to going grounding, but really remember who we are. We will return back to the soil. We'll be consumed again by fungus in our bodies, but just to have people remember that we can learn from nature. We are nature, we consume nature, and that everything that we need is in that, and not just physically to put in ourselves, but to watch and learn from. See how the seasons ebb and flow, and really understand that we can learn everything we need to know from observing and giving gratitude.
Shannon, thank you so much for joining me today to have this conversation. And for those of you who are listening, if any part of this resonated, you're in the right place, please reach out. I want to hear from you. And if you want to reach Shannon directly, the link to her website, Calendly, and Instagram profile are in the show notes. Thank you again, Shannon, and to everyone else. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you for the next episode of Ren Behind the Practice.